you're about to see is Innovation for National Security Showcase, which is a culmination of 10 weeks of hard work our student interns went through.
Everybody to the final presentations for the Innovating for National Security internship here at UC San Diego. I trust everyone had a safe trip. All of our guests, welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for all your support for the program. We're excited to show you everything that we've come across throughout the quarter. Good job to the teams for all the progress you have made. We're excited to see how you want to wrap up this quarter, everything you show us and our guests today.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for coming today. It's been a really wonderful quarter of a lot of collaboration with our younger partners. And I'd like to welcome Colonel Hoey and who else? Commander Morrell and Commander Watkins. Thanks for being here. They are one of the biggest supporters. Oh, and Lieutenant Colonel Norris, biggest supporter for our program for the last 2 quarters. And thank you so much for all of you for being here. With a special guest also, Jessica and Laura from Culmination Project, who are actually the sponsor for our events program. And also, I'd like to welcome our new National Security EIR, Brian Scurry. And thank you for being here. And Laura, you'll be mentioned later in our presentation, but he's one of our alumni for Hacking for Defense / i4NS. So, without further ado, we'll get started.
So let's go on to the student presentations, and we'll get started with Team Politactic. I welcome them onto the stage.
Team Politactic ended last quarter with a final MVP of doing a case study operations analysis of the D&T inspections. As throughout our time, we were led down a path of understanding that procedures, policies listed in the Naval Aviation Maintenance Program were outdated for future warfighting strategies of the Marine Corps distributed operations. An example of this is last quarter when we were introduced to the scenario of a MV-22B Osprey pilot not being able to successfully accomplish a humanitarian aid mission due to the flight hour limitations of current D&T inspection procedures, the 72-hour one.
With that as a team, we were given the go to continue the project, which we happily accepted and marched off into the spring quarter, confident that we have finally gained the clearest vision of what the problem we are trying to solve is and how exactly to solve it.
Well, like many things in the government, turns out that trying to make change is a lot harder to do than it is to say. As our team went on this quarter's journey, we were able to watch the process of a daily and turnaround inspection, be informed about V-22 Osprey's self-diagnostic systems, and made aware of software such as Cameo and UMA. But we were introduced to the very important and critical factor in making this policy change, and that is risk. By changing maintenance procedures, what kind of risk could that promote? What does it look like? And what evidence will we need to quell these important concerns?
The rest of our journey focused on figuring out how to balance risk against capability. By spending time crunching numbers on increased capabilities with inspection changes, to search for an elusive 4 terabytes of V-22 flight data that could help prove the point of reliability. Our team, Team Politactic, were able to be properly introduced to the real challenges of policy change and the many potholes that are strewn across the path to being successful on this problem. Throughout our time, we had to lean on each other, as our busy lives made scheduling feel like an impossible task. Yet, we continue to grow as a team and find ways to make strides on this project, all because of a universal desire to succeed and a genuine care for this program that motivated us to make the right sacrifices to seek out success, and a privilege it has been to see it through.
Hi everyone, so as mentioned, we are Team Politactics. In total, we have had 44 interviews and 92 stakeholder interactions. This is our team. My name is Jaden. I'm a 4th year cognitive behavioral neuroscience major.
This is Japan. I'm a 3rd year econ student. My name is Danny, and I'm a 1st year political science major.
Hey everyone, I'm Murray. I'm a 3rd year cognitive science major with a specialization in design and interaction.
So this is our support. Our problem sponsor was Lieutenant Colonel Bosar, who is a NV-22B Osprey pilot, as well as a squadron commander with 18 years of military service. Additionally, we have our team mentor, Stuart Volkov, who is a program manager at CAS, with years of experience at DARPA and ODI. Additionally, we have our beneficiaries, Colin Napoleon, who is a Super Stallion pilot, commanding officer with 26 years of military service. And our other beneficiary, Major Ryan, who is an NV-22B Osprey pilot, and an executive officer. We also wanted just to highlight both of these beneficiaries as they were very helpful throughout our project. So where we left off, previously, last quarter, we left off at the case studies operations analyst. And then on the bottom right is our roadmap for spring. However, things didn't go as we planned. And this is our previous policy statement that we had from last quarter, which was current operations D&T inspection policies, the 72-hour maintenance limit affects V-22 Osprey technological capabilities, which affects the Marine Corps' transition to distributed aviation for force design 2030.
Last quarter, we made a discovery about the divergent mission goals between the force design 2030 and the NAMP. And within that, we find that the NAMP is hard to change. And we are going to focus on the D&T section, which is outdated, and the outdated D&T section indeed produce extra risk and limited capabilities. Within that, we are going to mainly focus on 72-hour daily inspection limits. So our MVP last quarter was an analytical workgame that we are going to use it to prove the D&T inspection is outdated. Our journey this quarter is a lot smoother. At first, we thought we know what to do, and we made a new discovery about the 4 terabytes of data that isn't used. However, in the middle of this quarter, we realized that we can't really get that data in time, and we start wondering and pivoting our ideas. The next big pivot is the base visits, in which we get a lot of detailed information about the D&T inspection. So the D&T inspection refers to the turnaround inspection and daily inspections. The turnaround inspection is for every 24 hours, and it's only plane captains can do it. There's a thing called hot sitting in the turnaround inspection, which refers to the pilot left the engine on to prevent triggering a turnaround inspection. And for daily inspections, it's required every 72 hours and after any sort of maintenance. It's also only performed by the plane captains. So the D&T inspections introduce several pain points. For the first one, there's other maintenance tasks such as FAL are scheduled, and also the frequent inspection cycle introduced unnecessary wear and tear to the aircraft components. So the aircraft components last shorter than we expected. So the planning staff have to order extra components through emergency contracts. And also there's shortage of staff for plane captains. As we learned from our base visit, only 3 to 5 plane captains are available per ship, and they also have to handle other responsibilities. For the D&T inspection specifically, there is something called camera system, which we are going to introduce later, and that is specific to V-22 Osprey. That one is not fully utilized in the maintenance cycle and cause inefficient allocation of marine man hours. Along the way, we discovered different pain points for different personnel. For maintenance and planning office, they have to work around with the shortage of staff and scheduling. Also, they have to do the emergency contracts that I mentioned before. For pilot, they have to fly during the pinky hours, which refers to the transition time after the sun sets and before the moonrise. And this is because they want to do a hot sitting to avoid the turnaround inspections. And this introduces extra risk in the flying because of the low predictabilities. And for the COs, they have to work around the limited assets, and they have to adjust mission planning and mission statements to ensure mission success. For the regional commanders, they hope to balance the risk and also the capabilities over a large region. Our first MVP this quarter is abstract.
spreadsheet analysis, and in these two graphs, we show how the flight time and man hours change as the mission time increased under circumstances of 72-hour inspection and 120-hour inspections. And this is how it can be in specific scenarios. These are just really rough estimations, and we are seeking advice on that. So, as you can see from the scenarios listed, how do we get the data to test out the effects of extending the D&T inspections? Well, we realized that there were 4 terabytes of NV22 flight data belonging to the government that we could tap into. And by conducting a trend analysis of the different parts of the health of the aircraft, we would be able to analyze the safety and reliability of the aircraft going over the 72-hour limit. And this is reflected in our mission model canvas for weeks 3 and 5, where we wanted to do a trend analysis and decision-making model on whether the aircraft was suitable to fly. However, at this point, we realized that both our key supporters had a common interest, which was risk, the most important factor in this entire project. In order to change policy, we must be able to quantify acceptable risk and balance that against the increase in capability. So how do we go about assessing risks? We've identified a few key components that are related. First of all, the reliability of this onboard flight system that we keep talking about. Second of all, hot seating as a form of accepting risk written into the policy, where pilots accept the risk of the aircraft not having undergone the D&T inspection in order to keep flying. And third of all, the potential human error that might occur during manual maintenance and inspection. So what are those like self-diagnostic or automatic flight systems that we can use in categorizing this risk? One of them is the VSLED self-diagnostic system that is on the V-22 aircraft. So how the system works is that it pings the onboard flight system based on vibrations and checks the health and, for example, oil tank levels on all the different parts of the aircraft. And then apart from that, on base, there is also the UMA and Cameo system. So UMA is a system owned by the government where the maintainers manually enter the maintenance task and man hours. However, because they manually enter things, this open text box introduces a risk or human error in describing the problem, and it might also cause isolated maintenance in which data from the system is unable to be uploaded to the main server in case like a squadron is deployed somewhere else. On the other side, we have Cameo system, which is owned by Bell, Boeing, and Rolls-Royce. It's an interface which interprets the data from VSLED, the system that we showed just now, and kind of spits out a trend analysis of the health of the aircraft. However, because this is privately owned, only special access is needed to their server, and the government can't just use, or us in turn, we can't just use their data to perform whatever analysis that we want. And this is just a graph of how everything fits into each other. So you have the VSLED system, which sends data to the government server and to Cameo system. And this is where the 4 terabytes of flight data come from, which we're able to gain access through Colonel Taylor, who is the program manager of the PMA 275 office. And on the bottom, you see maintainers who who track maintenance tasks through UMA. And the fact that these two systems, Cameo and UMA, aren't integrated is something that we're also looking into as part of this project.
Well, that's all what we wanted to do with the data. It turns out it's hard to get. 4 terabytes of data is an insane amount. It's hard to compute how much data that is. And within our timeline of our course, we were not able to receive it, and we understand that. So at this point, we wanted to show you a data visualization, some sort of analysis that could help prove this reliability balanced with risk. However, within the timeline, we could not do it. So we make use of what we have. As you saw before, we had a basic spreadsheet of just different scenarios, but within that, we have different variables that we can change around. And ideally, if we were able to continue and get some sort of data on this project, we'd love to change those variables to show actual reliability and help prove policy change. So with that, leads us to our current problem statement. Current D&T inspection timelines do not accurately reflect modern aircraft technology on board the V-22 Osprey. Now we honed it down because we feel like this encompasses our entire project, but it gets specific enough where this is focused now on one certain area, and that can be expanded to include the different aspects that our team has continued for the last 2 quarters. Which leads us to where we see the future going, and what our current MVP could be and what it is now, which is a proposal to better integrate Cameo/Cameo adjacent systems into existing maintenance procedures. Now let me explain, we've broken out to 3 reasons. Reducing a need for manual maintenance during D&T, which will increase in man hours back to the VMM squadrons. Next thing is better modeling self-diagnostic onboard flight data is going to help allow for the possibility of more efficient maintenance procedures. The next aspect is less need to actually open up compartments, which is going to minimize erosion, save money spent on additional parts, and also not disrupt supply posturing for squadrons that's already strained hard. All of this is the idea to automate certain D&T inspections that we saw as redundant compared to the new onboard systems, with the idea of extending those D&T inspection timelines, which will in turn affect the long-term goals of distributed aviation to which the Marine Corps is looking to pursue in the future. Now this can be updated in our current mission model canvas with a focus on the key activities of proposing a better integration of Cameo or Cameo adjacent systems. The next would be the deployment. We believe delivering a data analysis to a group such as the Cunningham group can hone in on that case study / tabletop exercise. And the next aspect is presenting data visualizations to policymakers at CNAP, which was an original goal we had last quarter, but we didn't really understand how do we do that and what are they looking for. And then finally, we added to the mission accomplishment, which is increasing those man hours back to the VMM squadrons so they can focus on different maintenance procedures that could be important for future missions. Now, we wanted to end on this kind of open-ended question of future. We very much enjoyed working on this project, and we understand that i4NS is coming to a close as we finish the 2nd quarter. But we'd still love to continue this project, whether it's through different avenues or through i4NS in another quarter. But we really want to hone in on the aspect of it's been a privilege to work on a project within our undergrad time. It makes our lives much fuller, and to be able to work with people on a problem that means something in their lives and could affect the way their job works is very impactful, and we do care about it. So with that, we want to just say a special thank you to Rich and Rachel for their time, to Austin, Colonel Hoeing, Stuart Volkow for being an amazing mentor, and for everybody who came here to attend and listen to us talk. It's been a privilege, and we look forward to talking with you more. Thank you.
Directly bordering Mexico and on the coast to the Pacific Ocean, San Diego is a hotspot for international activities. The Coast Guard is responsible for protecting a 200 nautical mile radius with a limited budget and manpower.
Iterating on past maritime surveillance efforts on building a single buoy system, we shifted our focus to a more holistic approach, aiming to combine information from multiple sources and to access and acquire information in a funneling style.
To effectively monitor a large area, a combination of low acuity, high coverage tools like satellite, AIS, buoys, and coastal camera system can be utilized. Additionally, high acuity information about specific vessels can be obtained through deploying mobile surveillance devices such as UAVs. Given our initial conception, we began to investigate the feasibilities and details of creating such a system.
Initially, the focus was on developing a user-friendly common operating picture, also known as COP, to aid operators in detection. However, after interviewing Captain James Spittler, we realized the problem lied in the lack of information sharing between agencies.
We spoke to the Jayhawk operators at our second base visit and found that they used outdated cameras that are sometimes inoperational.
With the help of Lieutenant Commander Eric Watkins, we were able to identify the need for computer vision cameras for automatic vessel detection, geofencing, custom alerts, and vessel course tracking. Lieutenant Renee Mades confirmed the benefits of automated drone deployment to suspicious vessels in improving interdiction rates.
For the purpose of our experiment, we would integrate these features as a plugin for the open-source ATAC Android application. We would test the application among sensor operators in Sector San Diego and hypothetically develop additional features and roll out to other Coast Guard districts iteratively.
ship tracking team, and this is our current mission. We are seeking to enhance maritime domain awareness for the San Diego Coast Guard through use of enhanced intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets to prevent illicit transport of humans and goods. This is our ship tracking team.
My name is Thomas. My name is Gautam.
Akira.
Curtis.
Nicholas. And we work closely with our common sponsors, Captain James Spittler, Commander Burwell, and Lieutenant Commander Watkins, and our mentor Marcos, which we work closely to assure our deliverables and give our weekly progress. And initially, we were given a problem statement that the Sector San Diego's RECOM, Regional Coordinating Mechanism, needs a fully integrated system to track illicit vessels. And we hypothesized that we need a fully integrated sensors to give the 200 nautical mile radius for the Sector San Diego.
So to give you a sense of the budget that we are working with, for example, the NYPD has a budget of about $5.5 billion, and that's about like 5.5% of the entire city's budget. And they cover about 450,000 square miles. And the Coast Guard, for example, for instance, had like the entire U.S. Coast Guard has a budget of $13.4 billion, while the San Diego Coast Guard only has about 5 to 6 million to cover about 150,000 square miles. So you can see the difference right. This is our initial MMC. So our value proposition is a system of buoys with radar and camera systems, and deploying UASs to monitor illicit vessels, and coastal surveillance systems, and also like a common operating picture to make detection easier. And our beneficiaries are Lieutenant Commander Eric Watkins and Commander Lobo.
So from our first basic visit, we have acquainted a bunch of business information and we gained a general insight of the problem. So specifically in the surveillance aspect, we only have 12 coastal line cameras, 2 radars, and a spare amount of aircraft encounters. And for the Jayhawk operators who are actually operating and doing the surveillance, they have a long time of surveillance, they have long working hours, and they have to shift between multiple monitors and manually process the information from multiple sources. And also the illicit activities often happen at night or during foggy weather, which adds another layer of difficulty during the manual detection. So from that, we came with our initial MVP. So our idea is that we can integrate information from different sources. We have the general static surveillance using buoys, AIS data, also coastline cameras, and the system is going to use computer vision and artificial intelligence to make potential detections and classifications and notify the human operators to see if a vessel may be illicit. And from that, the human operator can make decision whether or not to send more dynamic resources such as UAVs to make further detection. And also the interface should be easily interpretable by the human operators, so they don't have to look around about the raw data, but rather the more actionable suggestions.
So there's a few limitations. The first one being, despite the geographic coverage, the weather of the day could really impact what they can see. Some days they can see all the way to the wall in Mexico, and other days they could barely see like a few hundred meters out. So this is our MMC development around week 7. Some of the big differences is we have a few new key partners, such as Customs and Border Patrol, and we were hoping for a Bloom Technology Center of Expertise, but after more review, we found them to be a saboteur because they saw us as somewhat of a competitor doing the same problem set as them. And from before, we got 3 new beneficiaries. We got Jayhawk Petty Officer Ken Bentel, Captain James Fiddler, and Lieutenant Renee Mays. And for deployment, one new thing we were looking at was FAA regulations so that we could look into vertical drones within airspace.
Moving through week 7, we had a quality handful of interviews with both our comm sponsors and possible key partners. Between these interviews, we received a direct parallel in responses, and that response was a concern for how we were going to integrate this data. We took a step back, looked at geography, and seeing what do we really want to integrate. And we believe that rather than just utilizing what the U.S. Coast Guard has to offer in their integration process, we could utilize other Department of Defense and Department of Homeland Security assets and integration processes. We can see that within the Southern California sector, specifically the San Diego sector close to the national border, there are other partners that we work with hand in hand with, such as Port of San Diego, U.S. Navy, and also the Customs and Border Patrol. These could be possibly integrated with U.S. Coast Guard assets to maximize surveillance of geography in these current hotspots near the national border. Moving forward to how this developed within our MMC. We maintained value proposition for each of our beneficiaries. However, we were able to expand to who our supporters were going to be and our key partners. Those, as mentioned before, were going to be the partners within CBP, Port of San Diego, and possibly also the U.S. Navy.
All right, thank you. Now, time for our rebirth. So, after a lot of interviews and different scenarios where we talked to a lot of different people, due to the lack of compatibility within the Coast Guard and its partners, as Tom had mentioned before, the Port of San Diego, the Customs Border Patrol, and the U.S. Navy, there's a lack of detail in the cameras and the systems that they use, and then there's security limitations amongst each different partner. So that made it very hard for them to be able to have a common source in order to get this data and be able to perceive this information that they're taking in. And so, in addition to this MMC development, we wanted to add Joan Tedeschi on as a key partner for this because she provided us a lot of insight, a lot of information that we would like to have gotten earlier, but it was still never too late. And so we added Sentient Vision as well and Shield AI in order to try to implement some drone implementations. And then also as a key activity, we wanted to re-identify some companies as well as comparing the path on which it's required to even utilize different UAVs in the systems.
So at the end of the 10 weeks, we refined our problem statement to be that the District 11 Drone Harbor Operations Center is struggling to detect, identify, and intercept illicit activity using limited and outdated surveillance assets. We've come to the conclusion that Sector San Diego will benefit from being able to facilitate and monitor their own improved set of sensory. And going forward, even though our MVP will be about improving sensor capabilities, we feel like the biggest problem the Coast Guard has right now is their lack of unified interface that takes in data from partner DoD and DHS agencies. We can't really work with that because there's a lot of security protocols in place with dealing with classified information between different agencies. Hypothetically, if we could address that, we would look for a third-party data hub that would be a trusted source where the different agencies could put their data in and then they could fetch data from that. Kind of like what the Homeland Security Information Network is now, which the DHS uses to share sensitive information between the different partners.
with that being said, our MVP for this quarter is going to be improving the current sensor capabilities. After we went to Jayhawk, we saw that the operators were working with outdated camera technology from the mid-2000s, and they had to manually piece together information from aircraft, radar, and camera. So for our MVP, we've identified 3 main components. The first component is going to be acquiring new cameras with improved range and/or AI capabilities. We would place 2 cameras to start with, one on Point Loma by the U.S. Coast Guard lighthouse pointed towards the ocean, and one on a lifeguard station on Imperial Beach. For the camera options, we were looking at C.AI's 360-degree camera with 16 times zoom capability and AI capabilities like automatic tracking of vessels and perimeter surveillance, so that when the operator sets a certain radius, if a vessel goes into it, the cameras will start tracking the vessel. That would be placed on Point Loma because that's a hotspot for jet ski drop-offs. That would cost around $40,000 and have about 14 nautical mile coverage. For another possible camera, we were looking into Teledyne FLIR's HRC Ranger camera with 12 times zoom capability and 12 nautical mile coverage. We would put that in Imperial Beach on a lifeguard station. That would be about $40,000 as well. The second component would be add computer vision of the capabilities to the existing camera streams. We would add things like geofencing, automatic vessel detection, and automatic alerts. We could do this with existing open source libraries like OpenCV. And then the third component would be creating a drone workflow for the sector San Diego. We would ideally partner with Shield AI's VBAT drones and place at least one on San Clemente Island, ideally 2 to 3. And they're each about $300,000 and have 100-kilometer coverage with 10-hour flight endurance. And then they will be deployed off of land from San Clemente Islands. And then the 2 options could be deploy them as needed based on suspicious vessels detected, or have a schedule that the drones follow. But with that comes the risk of the cartels catching on to the schedule, so that's something to keep in mind. We would implement this as a plugin for the open source ATAC Android application, and all the data from the new cameras and the existing camera with computer vision overlay would go into it. The operators would see that and they can launch drones off of the Android application. We believe that overall the MVP will help the Coast Guard achieve different District 11 strategic framework goals, such as achieving persistent intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance along the maritime boundary region, optimizing capabilities, and modernizing search and rescue. So again, the plugin would work as the new camera data and then the existing data stream from the cameras with CV on top of it. That would go into the ATAC common operating picture, and then the operators can use that to deploy drones.
Okay, so these would be the steps necessary for deployment. So both the cameras and the UAVs would need a proposal from the District 11 office, which would then need to be approved by CG2 or the Coast Guard Intelligence. And then once approved, then they can be implemented into the budget. Then they would need further technical approval from both CG2 as well as CG711 or the Office of Aviation Forces for the UAVs. And lastly, ATAC connection would need to be implemented for the cameras, and the UAVs would need to be registered as aircrafts, as well as the operators would need to be certified and trained. So we all just wanted to say thank you to our mentors and our policy sponsors for their support and their guidance, as well as Rachel, Rich, Stuart, and Austin. It was a privilege working with all of you, and we thank you so much for this opportunity.
Welcome, I'm Arav, and we're Team Basecamp, dedicated to enhancing the lives of single Marines at MCAS Miramar.
How did the barracks team approach this issue and why?
After visiting MCAS Miramar on April 20th, we categorized the observed issues. While some problems require consistent pressure over years to overcome resource reluctance, we identified 2 areas for significant improvement. Rather than investing in new ideas, we can enhance service provision through established channels and focus efforts on well-defined targets.
How did you identify problems with food quality at the chow hall? Also, what methods did you employ to identify the problems, and what were some specific problems you learned from interviews and surveys?
So initially, we all had different ideas about what to do with the barracks issue. Some were working with Unreal Engine 5 to modify the dorm, while others were looking at sustainable architectures and sustainable building to save energy, which then in turn can help power other necessary equipment on the base.
When we start to interview the Marines, we realized that many complaints about their dining experience from the on-base chow hall, the Gonzalez Hall. Their complaints focus on 2 main issues. The first one is the lack of healthy food options. For example, many of them complain that excessive greasy food options make it harder for them to maintain their physical performance. And the lack of nutrition and insufficient food portions leads to Marines spending more money on their own to make up their needs. The second is the poor food quality and palatability. Many Marines experience undercooked and overcooked food frequently, and the lack of flavor in chow hall food decreases their appetite a lot. Given the amount of similar complaints from every Marines we talk to, we proceed to gather more data to validate this issue.
From our literature search, we learned that poor food quality is not a universal problem in the Marine Corps. For example, we gathered information from online blogs and articles that Marines from Camp Pendleton are quite happy with their chow hall's food quality. From our initial insights from speaking with Lieutenant Colonel Norse and Marines at Miramar, the chow hall food team decided to focus on validating the seriousness of the 2 problems, of first, the lack of healthy food options, and second, the palatability from the poor food quality. We employed 2 methods to explore this area. First, we interviewed and surveyed a total of 82 Marines from the base and gathered their opinions and perspectives and thoughts about the chow hall foods and their experiences there with the food. Second of all, we attempted to interview the active duty food service team about their opinions on the chow hall and the state of things there. But unfortunately, we were not able to get in contact with them.
What interview/base visits really changed how we thought about the maintenance request and fulfillment problem?
So our issue was a primarily on base issue, and it gave us a lot of insight into how the Marines live on base. And being on base and talking with the single Marines and also the chain of command gave us an important look into how the base was run and gave us some valuable behind the scenes information. And the most significant lesson I learned was you gotta start from scratch sometimes, and that's okay. We were told in the beginning that we were gonna pivot our idea, and I refused to accept it, but then a couple weeks in, we had to pivot because of a budget issue.
2 interviews that really changed how I thought about the IBM Maximo problem were with Mr. Roy Francis and Mr. Edwin Mackius. Roy Francis, the business performance lead, gave us some excellent insight into how the contracts for maintenance contractors worked and what jobs they were allowed to do. Edwin Mackius allowed us to find out that the maintenance contractor Chugosh was getting flooded with more maintenance requests than the contract could even handle. And this allowed us to realize that the contracts were incredibly important for developing an efficient maintenance request system.
The base visit on May 2nd was very important for the team. Until then, we had a very vague idea about how maintenance requests flowed, who listened to what and forwarded what to who until finally whatever was needed gets done. During our visit, we talked to a person at the Barracks Support Center and learned where they got maintenance requests from, such as the QR codes posted around the base, and where they were sent to. That's when words like IBM Maximo went from an abstraction to, oh, okay, that's a system that collates work orders and tracks their completion, and that's important for the other thing. And then we went and learned about that.
What key insights did you guys learn from your on-base visits?
Through using lean business methodology and its process, including beneficiary archetype, beneficiary discovery, mission model canvas, minimum viable product, and value proposition canvas, we were able to apply civilian concepts to defense-related sector to identify an issue and propose resolution in an efficient manner. Just like how cutting-edge academic research is interdisciplinary, this open cooperation and dialogue between different disciplines and sectors to solve an issue, as Steve Blank implied, is one advantage our society has. Through these discourses, in early stages, we can gain a lot of insight and save a lot of pain later. Thus, whenever something is stuck or there is a hiccup, using this process, we can quickly identify the pain point and try to rectify it. Thus, this practice should be encouraged more.
During our pursuit for the solutions, we learned that system-wide changes in policy and contracts requires effort in time, money, and can lead up to negotiations to many levels above the chain of command. However, both problems can be partially addressed with some investigations and support from the senior leaders of the base by allocating the available resource.
One thing I realized from solving on-base issues is that trying to communicate with enough of our beneficiaries through virtual methods is difficult due to the amount of time outreach and setting up a meeting took. Our best insights often came from us getting out of the building and going to the base itself, where it was much easier to meet with beneficiaries. Our last base visit even allowed us to collect over 50 survey responses for the Chow Hall survey.
A suggestion for the next team Basecamp. Whenever you guys feel less motivated about solving this problem statement, always remember one thing. Every droplet counts towards the ocean. And it is because of men and women like them in the uniform, which allows guys and girls like us to live safely and peacefully in the comfort of our houses. The United States of America thanks you for your service. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Arif and I'm the team lead for Project Basecamp. Let me spend the first few seconds giving you an overview of what our project was about, because as you all know, for a nice essay, you need to have a nice title. So I'm just going to do the same thing. So basically, when we were introduced to this problem, this was the first quarter that this problem statement was introduced to us. The question was to improve the quality of life for single Marines on the base, which included everything from the transportation, the living conditions itself, the physical space, everything and anything. We narrowed it down to two problems, which was improved Chow Hall quality, which is where the Marines eat their food at, and the second one was improve the maintenance system, request system, and integrate it with IBM Maximo. This is our team with nice, pretty faces. Everybody, if you would like to give your introduction, start from Mitchell.
Hi everyone, I'm Mitchell.
I'm Paula.
I'm Camden.
I'm Daha.
I'm Horisachi. I'm Kevin.
I'm Karina.
Thank you. So our original problem statement started from the MCAS Miramar barracks are uncomfortable and inconvenient for residents living in the inside, which were the single Marines. So again, as I said, basically when we were introduced with the problem statement, it was more focused on the physical aspect of the barracks itself. But then we narrowed it down to something which we could feasibly and practically solve in this 10-week period, which was working on the Chow Hall and the IBM Maximo system.
So initially, we had a lot of different ideas about what to do to address the solution that we were going to implement. Our base visit on April 20th was a watershed event in that it gave us a lot of insight into all the problems. We were able to look at it firsthand, as well as that we learned that there are budgetary limits, time constraints, and the bureaucratic hurdles along the way. Thus, after the base visit, we listed around 2,000 problems that we were able to identify, and from there we narrowed it down to two most feasible and most inexpensive, still important problems that we could solve, and those were Chow Hall food and a maintenance request system optimization.
So here's the first version of our mission model canvas. The key partners here were the 3,000 Marines living on base. Those were the main ones we were focusing on. Our key activities at the time was we were researching a lot of on-campus resources, and we also were interviewing a lot of Marines at the time. And for our key resources, it was those same UCSD resources there. And our buy-in support, deployment,
those were all kind of educated guesses at that point, since we didn't have a great idea what the problem really was. And we were kind of told that we didn't really have much money to spend, so we had to make it as inexpensive as possible. And for a closer look at our beneficiaries of value proposition from the last one, our single Marines were the main beneficiary, and their gains were improved quality of life, which connected to improved on-base dorms, and quick maintenance, which connected to making the maintenance request system more efficient. And another problem sponsor that we had was Colonel Bedell and Lieutenant Colonel Norris, and we both believe that they would be concerned with retention and increasing it, and we believe that both these solutions would help with that. And we believe the MCAS, Miramar custodial facilities and staff were concerned with faster submission requests, which was related to the maintenance request system. They will learn more about in the next slide.
Okay, so for our first MVP, obviously we said we were kind of not sure what problem we were going to be solving. We had a kind of a list of what we thought we would be solving, and we kind of did some research based on what we thought. So initially, when we heard we'd be doing barracks redesign and maintenance requests, we kind of looked into what kind of happens on campus here at UCSD. We live in residential halls, and they have their own maintenance request system. So we kind of looked into that first. The picture in the corner over there is kind of what the UCSD maintenance request kind of looks like. So we did some research on that. In terms of the barracks redesign, we decided to use a 3D map of Miramar East and kind of use that as a hub world for exploring new designs. And then we went on to use Unreal Engine 5 to create some visual representations of our redesigns. And we kind of used VR as well, so that our beneficiaries could fully visualize what these new barracks would look like. A mechanic can also be implemented to show the before and after representation of these barracks. And then also getting out of the building, we kind of did a lot of base visits. We went and asked for surveys from people to kind of get an idea of what needs to be improved upon. And these are just some pictures of kind of what we did, what we looked at. So for the MCAS Miramar Barracks chart, so initially we kind of thought that we would be working mostly with Lieutenant Colonel Norris, and we kind of thought we were working on a problem that would be kind of working on helping him and his team and their readiness. But we realized we could actually reach out to more squadron leaders. They're like here. So we realized we could kind of reach out to them and kind of get support from them as well.
So really what we'd like to illustrate here is the difference between sort of where we were on week 2 and where we were on week 9, some of the slides you've seen so far. And really what we'd like to demonstrate here is the fact that, week 2 we started out with relatively ill-defined sort of mission statements. Week 9 we had narrowed down to specific goals in specific areas. Working, of course, with people within the organization who are most knowledgeable. So when we had questions about food, we knew to reach out to the active duty food services team. When we had questions for the civilian employees, we had their contact information and had several fruitful interviews with them as well. One thing that kind of affected us throughout this journey, though, is our attention to the mission budget and cost. We were consistently reminded whenever we asked the question about the budget, the answer we often got was this. Actually, no, this makes it seem like things are okay. The intention was closer to, yeah. So, this accompanying us throughout our journey, we tried to focus our efforts on places where we could improve existing systems, where we could suggest the resolution of existing inefficiencies, sort of with the tools we had. And we've been glad to see that the Marine Corps is seeing eye to eye with us on that, and that their efforts also, have to do with making better use of the tools that they have, something that we'll explore more in the coming slides.
So what have we learned from the last 10 weeks? So I made some flow chart for both the chow hall problem and also the IBM maximal problem. So for the Marines, the highlight part, we can see that highlight part is what they experience. For the maintenance, they submit a maintenance request, and then through some process, they don't care, they will receive service from the contractors. And then for the chow hall, they go to food serve, they go to chow hall, they eat, they get served by the chow hall. And then every process in the back is what we're working on. For example, for the IBM Maximal, for the Marines, when they have something broken in their apartments, or in their barracks, what they do is submit a request for the ISN, who organize the request and then submit it to the info system coordinator, who organize it again, and then submit to the IBM Maximal, which is the system that processes their maintenance request. The IBM Maximal send the data to the USMC Max, which store all the maintenance data from all the bases for Marine Corps. And then they also send the contract to the contractor, who's the Shuka, who provide service to the Marines. And then what we realized here, and also actually for the Marine Corps, they already realized before we did, is that the part over here where the ISN they have a duplicated step that is maybe redundant because the maintenance request could actually go directly into the info system coordinator, which is what they do. So very recently, they just have an update to their maintenance systems, which they take out the ISN from the system, so the system is going to be much easier. And also they implement the QR code to help Marines to request for maintenance much faster. But with that, it also comes with a problem, which is before the Marines, their maintenance requests have to be filed by hand and also have to go through layers of authorizations. Now it's much easier for them, which is good for the Marines, but also it shows a problem. Before, the contractors, who is the Chuka, is supposed to expect about 500 maintenance requests per month as set in their contract. However, with this new update, they're receiving 2 times more maintenance requests each month. And that's the problem we found where we should work on. And for the chow hall, what we realized is, like we said before, there's a lot of issues with the chow hall, Marines experiencing the chow hall, such as bad food quality and also not enough food options. When we try to find out how we can solve the problem, we're thinking of doing some policy changes or contract changes. And it turns out that if we want to do any of these changes, we have to go all the way through the command from chow hall service to naval installation logistics, and then go to MECU West, which is Marine Corps Installation West, who take care of the military installations throughout the Marine Corps, the west of the US. And then that goes up to MCI Com, which is the command, the MCI command, which eventually turns into USMC headquarters, who will finally have to say if we want any contract change or policy change. And that doesn't seem very viable for our teams to finish the problem within 10 weeks. So we also have to tackle on that problem, which I have our teammates to next. Oh, and the data here. Sorry, forgot to say that. So for the Marines, so for the chow hall teams, we interviewed about 82 Marines to be specifically, and 66% of them saying that they always go to work in hunger. And then 51% of them have experienced raw food or overcooked food before. And then 88% of them saying that they don't like the taste of food in chow hall. And then for them all, about 38% of Marines say that they frequently experience those issues. And for the IBMX and for the maintenance request, a lot of Marines say that, most of Marines say that they have experienced waiting for maintenance requests that's over 1 month.
So I will now go over the final MVP for the chow hall team. I'll first go over briefly the experiments that we conducted to narrow down to our final MVP, and also the results of our QR code survey that we got that are showing you. So first of all, for the experiments, when we went on base, we posted posters of QR codes linking to our Chow Hall experience survey for Marines to fill out to get their opinions on the food there and any suggestions for how to improve it. And we got 54 total responses to that survey. We also conducted phone and video interviews one-on-one with various Marines, about 20 or 30 or so, and we got their valuable perspectives and their suggestions on what could be better. And finally, we visited the base on May 2nd and May 17th as well to tour the food hall itself, to have a look around, and also speak to at a kind of social event on the 17th at the Great Escape, where we also distributed a lot of the QR codes there. So shown on the right are two graphs that are the result data from our QR code survey that I mentioned had 54 total responses. So that pie chart on the upper right just shows that for the green, that shows that the percentage of the Marines who fill out the survey that eat daily at the Chow Hall, and 20.8% eat there every week. So for the green and orange, those are the Marines. So total about 65% of the Marines that we interviewed, or that filled out our survey, eat at the Chow Hall regularly, daily or weekly. So it goes to show that the problems at the Chow Hall are experienced by many of them. On the bottom right, you'll see one of our key questions that we posed on the survey, asking about what are some gripes or areas of improvement that the Chow Hall has. We found that 29 of them mentioned that they've eaten food that's undercooked. So they mentioned rice, important proteins like chicken. They mentioned 21 of them mentioned that the food was too salty many of the time, and also about 45 of them mentioned the food was bland often. So this goes to the proteins as well. And finally, 34 of them mentioned it's often greasy and oily and not ideal for their health. So again, the results, I'll just summarize. There are a lot of concerns with the palatability. So again, the lack of flavor, the greasiness, and the oiliness. And they also had reported instances. So from this, not just the survey, but also the one-on-one chats with them. There are many instances with the protein. They said, believe it or not, several of them said their proteins are both undercooked and overcooked at the same time often. And they had anecdotal kind of stories of either themselves or their friends or their acquaintances saying they experienced indigestion from foods such as salad, which is something important for their nutrition. So our MVP at the bottom left are we propose a tighter quality control measures by the active duty food services team who we determined, and the key people there are Master Sergeant Lee and Mr. Place, along with the food contractor Sodexo in this case, to ensure that the food is palatable. So writing into the contract some more stringent food quality control clause in it.
Alright, so now that we are near the end of our presentation, let's remind ourselves what we're doing here. Our initial problem statement, which we have interpreted liberally, was to reimagine the lived environment at MCAS Miramar. We narrowed it down to the two areas we wanted to focus on out of many possible choices we could have made, many presentations gone unmade. To focus on the food safety and quality issues discussed previously, and also the system of maintenance, request, and fulfillment, which has to do with sort of the direct, sort of day-to-day, quality of life at the barracks. The sort of big, thing to keep on the horizon is that a new system with a lot of improvements that we'd like to see is going live this October with testing occurring through June. To really sort of speak definitively on that, we'd have to sort of see how it all works in practice, which, we'll see if someone does next fall. The real sort of the main things we want to look out for there is that, this new system prompts better quality input from people looking to report their issues. It does not trouble them with unnecessary delays. It gets that information where it needs to go faster. And really the only thing we wanted to suggest on top of that is that there be better integration with the existing database of contacts so that multiple people could be more efficiently alerted as to the status of their problems as they proceed through from requester to vendor and back. But now the other thing we have to look at is this table over here on the right side of the slide. As you can see, the contract that Gas Government Solutions, the team of 9 people, and I'll remind you, 9 people who oversee pretty much all the maintenance over at the MCAS barracks of 3,000 residents, their initial contract called for 500 work orders a month. And as you can see, there's been a sort of steady uptick, which means something, right? Maybe if there was a whole bunch of problems at once and then significantly less problems the next following month, we could think, oh, things are getting substantially better. I mean, we could have thought that in, January. But by May, we are wiser and we see that there's clearly something else going on. Can we attribute this entirely to the fact that it's now easier to report your problems? Maybe. Just recently they were using paper forms to submit these problems. So someone who wanted to report an issue would have to fill out an entire paper form, and maybe they'd rather endure months more of cold showers with no hot water than fill out one more form, right? That's a real hurdle you put in people's way, and now that that's gone, maybe that's why we're getting more work orders. But maybe that's not entirely what it is. So maybe there's no rush. Maybe we can blame the residents. Probably on this one, because if residents, and perhaps I'm not entirely speaking to Marines here, don't scrub down their bathroom walls, the walls of their shower, mildew will build up, and eventually that stuff will sink in so deep that they have to regrout the walls. That's a work order. That's one of these work orders in the table, potentially more than one. And so perhaps there are things that people can do, use maybe those little metal hair catchers to keep their hair from clogging the drains. Perhaps you can help use less toilet paper. I'm not going to do it, but you can see how that works out for you. But you might already be seeing sort of diminishing returns in this line of inquiry. So the last thing we really want to point out too is these buildings are old, over 20 years old. And as they get older, these repairs are getting more and more ambitious. Larger and larger sections of the environment have to be entirely replaced. Entire sections of pipe are being uncovered and lifted out and replaced because they're just so clogged or perforated or otherwise unusable. And so our initial image of reimagining, our initial image of remodeling, we responded to that by saying, oh, well, we're going to redesign everything. We're going to drop a whole new architectural plan for you. We're going to rip all the cables out and put in fiber optic. We're going to do everything, right? But and then we moved away from that. What we see now is that we're kind of moving back towards it. These repairs increasingly are taking on the aspect of remodeling. We just don't call it that because it's happening piecemeal, because it's happening, literally one piece at a time. And so in this choice between do we make a big investment or do we stay the course, I just sort of like to remind you that the status quo is not static, right? Just because you're willing to stay the course doesn't mean that the environment isn't constantly changing around you all the while. And so if at the very least, we do something to address this, it would be to really reach out to the maintenance vendor and see what additional resources they need to cope with, as you can see, a massively and probably permanently increased workload.
All right, so going into the future. So we think our proposals are viable for future success, and we have faith that the chain of command at MCAS Miramar will take the proper actions to improve the food quality and the maintenance request system. And some of us may continue this project, some of us may not, but we think we've laid a great foundation for this project to be taken up by future teams. These are our white papers that summarize our projects. Feel free to use the QR code if you want to access them and read them. I'll give you a second if you'd like to do that. And lastly, thank you. This was a great project to work on. I want to thank Ray Rachel, Rich, Lieutenant Colonel Norris, Austin, anyone else I missed, and everyone else that helped us along this journey. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So I just want to kind of show you where we've been and where we're going. So you've probably already seen what i4NS is. This is our, i4NS was inspired by Hacking for Defense to expose national security alternative as a career and learning to university students that otherwise would never know that exists. UC San Diego lives here in La Jolla and in a Navy town called San Diego, yet 99.9% of students don't get a chance to interact or even meet operators in our own town. So I hope that, our hope is to change that by, at least each of the students meeting with operators that serve our mission. So our journey this far, my colleague and my dear friend Gwen Comosan is not here with me today, but she and I kickstarted this 3 years ago with 2 teams and 8 students, and Leora was one of them. And here we are in 2023, we're at 10 teams, 5 students, so we're really super astounded, but very proud that we came this far. So the student teams, as you've seen, is comprised of 46 students. They're open from anyone from first year freshmen to all the way to PhD students. And it's multidisciplinary, multi-diverse, does not require any tech background, and with varying familiarity, usually zero national security. This is a really quick snapshot of our majors. As I said, Mitchell is a medical school student, right? And then you have Zara, who's a Comp Sci. We have an inordinate number of Comp Sci students in the class. And then you have someone like Nicholas, who's an international student. So it's extremely diverse, almost mimicking what they would face if they were to go work for a Silicon Valley companies in Palo Alto. Very diverse, you never know who you're gonna be with, right? So why now? Because we definitely, with the great competition going on with our friend in PRC, is that we need to build a future leaders and manager with an entrepreneurial mindset, not the status quo. We need to develop the talent pipeline for national security and critical industry sectors to make sure that we stay ahead of everybody else. So the value we always talk to our federal agency industry is like, look, your i4NS graduates, alumni, already know the ecosystem, they know the language, they know the lingo. They're ready to be working with your company, right? I guess the learning curve is less after i4NS, and Austin could attest to that. And then it's all about workforce development for the future of our country. So the value to students, they may not realize this, but they learn time management, working with people they never met before, so more of a team building. They've enhanced their resume and portfolio to say, look, I have already been a DoD intern for 10 weeks working for Rich and Rachel. So that in itself should be a reason that they should hire you. And then the fact that they've been exposed to a career in national security. So the recent success is Leora, yay! He's working in a competition project. Madison Learning, she's a GA. Austin, who's going to be starting his position at Northrop Grumman. And then Murray, who has been accepted for UCPC, which is a internship in Washington, D.C. for the academic program 2024. So congratulations to y'all. So I'm going to go this real quick. These are some of the quad charts that the students have done. This is one that is actually going forward. This is a policy statement that was given to us by Lieutenant Colonel Norris, who we met tonight, on how to deal with jet problems at Miramar. So this is actually going to a prototype phase for possible funding actually in a month. So we're really excited about that. This again is a ONR potential award. We're still pushing for it for a mammal strike and how to spend it. And I'll just keep going because I know lack of time. And this one, Alan's here today. How to lighten a air crew equipment, which is super important. This one was this one I love because we actually got kicked out by the Summitry Center Navy reactors. They said you are asking a uncomfortable questions that we don't want to answer, so we're not going to talk to you anymore. So this is the only time where Steve Blank, who's founder of this whole lean methodology, said you did a good job. You got kicked out of the building. And then this again was Lee Orr's project, where this was actually pre-COVID. This was going to be funded as a program record by SOCOM. But remember what happened in New York? The day before they were going to go brief the person that was going to fund our project, COVID happened, and he retired. So this is still the fish that got away. And this is our first project with Space Force, which is super fun. And this is one that I was talking to the Coast Guard partners. This one we got to work with NQ9 squadrons and the Cal Guard on wildfire. So, looking ahead, so we're going to continue to work with our Common Mission Project, which is currently yours here, and local agency, San Diego Sector and Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. And the reason why that is that they're our neighbors, and it gives the students opportunity to get to know their operators, their problem sponsor very deeply, because they can just drive there instead of having to drive across country. Right. And then we're going to continue to focus on workforce development using i4NS as a model. And then our next project for next winter will be to train for commercialization. Because all these projects are great, but if it's just sitting on the shelf, it's not doing any of us any good. So I want to thank you, Common Mission Project, for giving us a problem set and continue to support us. I'd like to thank you, Lockheed Martin, who's given us an impact fund to allow students to travel. And of course, UCSD San Diego's Research Affairs is hosting this wonderful program. And least but not least, academic internship program led by Tricia Taylor, who's been wonderful about finding a way to give credits to interdisciplinary students for credits, right? Because like I said, the students are here from first year freshman all the way to PhD. How do we make it worthwhile for them to take the course? And I would say that, and if you tell them yourself, it's always been, look, we're working on a real problem that's needed right now instead of some dusty case studies. So, we're looking forward to seeing all of you in 2024. You all get invitations for the next showcase. You could attend the alumni. We're trying to get Alex, right, to come out here. And then stay tuned at innovation at ucsd.edu. Thank you so much for being on here tonight. Last but not least, I want to thank Rich Austin, who's been my partner in crime. Austin, my long-suffering Tony, for always saying, hey, can I have 18 pizza like tomorrow, right? And then Doug has taken all the pictures and all the videos. And then my colleague and my mentor, Greg Horowitz, who got me started on this journey. Thank you so much.
Yeah, everybody.